Thank you for joining me, David Horowitz.
My pleasure.
Icon of the conservative movement, and very kindly have invited me down to your Restoration Weekend here in Palm Beach. It's not the best weather it's ever been for Restoration Weekend, but the venue is...
We had hail one year.
Did you really? Okay, well, it's definitely not the best. But it's beautiful down here. You have assembled, as you always do, the creme de la creme of the counter-resistance, of the anti-political...
It's like a boot camp for the war.
You say, I read once that you don't like to call the David Horowitz Freedom Center a think tank, you call it a battle tank.
Battle tank. Well, I was raised by communists to fight.
Right.
And I was frustrated for a long time on the right because nobody wanted to fight. And people like you came along, and it's changed.
It's starting to get a little better. Well, let's start at the beginning. Let's start with the... Not quite as far back as that, but start with Berkeley in the 60s. You're one of the few people alive in the conservative movement now who not just remembers that time but was active in it. Most people by now know your story. They know that you began on one side and then drifted over to the other, and you're now a standard bearer for freedom and freedom of expression and whatnot. But when you began and you were active on campus in the 1960s, doing grad studies at Berkeley, right? The atmosphere there was, let's say, excitable. The atmosphere today on college campuses is a little different. Can you describe these two moments of intense...
Well, it was more an age of innocence, really. We had demonstrations. I gave a speech. I was once hauled in by the dean's committee because I didn't ask for a permit.
This on Sproul Plaza.
They said, "Oh, there might be a riot." I said, "I thought they were nuts." But the first half of the 60s was a fairly innocent period. I always wanted to hear what my opponents had to say because it would make me a better radical. 60s went really dark after the Vietnam War started, and people... I mean, basically, what it was basically draft dodgers. That's what of course, they were anti-American also. They wanted us to lose, the left wanted us to lose the Vietnam War. But it got violent in the second half of the decade. But even then, it's nothing like what's going on now.
How would you describe the difference in atmosphere between just being on campus in the 60s versus...
Well, I cannot visit a campus without a bodyguard.
Because you were speaking recently.
I couldn't go to Berkeley the last time we were supposed to.
We tried our best, and we eventually had me and Pam and Mike Cernovich, the last remaining. Because
no microphones and no security, and and the universities are colluding. Here's what's happened. I just came out with a book called The Left in the University, which is really dispatches from this battlefront over the last 30 years. The left, first they purged conservatives from the faculties by hiring only their own. Then they purged conservative books from the reading lists so that a student can go through 4 years of a liberal arts college, never encounter a conservative adult, or read a book by a conservative who hasn't been dead for 100 years. Then they changed the curriculum. So, I mean, a conservative couldn't be in women's studies because it's not a study of women. It's about a training in feminist Marxist claptrap.
Structurally does not allow for conservative opinions.
Exactly right.
This is the same thing they've done in journalism, precluding certain kinds of expression.
What they really did was revert our colleges to their 19th century, their origins actually from the 17th century when Harvard was created. All the collegiate institutions then were religious schools. They were doctrinal. They taught the doctrines of Methodists or Presbyterians or Catholics, and they trained priests and ministers. And that's what the left has succeeded in doing. These are religious institutions, and that's, if you have a scientific institution, which is what the modern research university was in the 20th century, then you want to hear two sides, if there's a dissenting opinion, and you compare the evidence. But now, if you have a religious institution, which is what Berkeley is today, then the dissenting opinion isn't a dissent. It's a heresy. Yeah. and you burn them at the stake.
Cancel their free speech week.
Or
Take
do
their
the
money.
next best
Take
thing.
their money and don't give them their venues.
It's horrific. It's horrifying. They have destroyed our liberal arts colleges.
It's been observed by some people when you remove religion from the equation, whether it's in university or in public life, you don't just remove religion. You make the space for something worse to take its place. And that today is social justice.
There's two kinds of religions. There's a religion that says the world is a really messed up place, fallen. But on the other side, there's a divinity who's going to sort it out for us. That's, in my book, that's okay. These people aren't dangerous. Then there's the religion of social justice, which says the world is a messed up place, and if you give us enough power, or we can acquire it,
We can fix it here on Earth.
we will create heaven on earth. These people are dangerous.
And that actually is a character.
That's why communists killed so many people. 100 million people died.
That's a function. It's a feature of communism. Is the arrogance, the audaciousness of believing that you can create a heaven on earth. It has that in common with social justice, and also
social justice is communism. The more beautiful the dream of social justice or communism, heaven on earth, the greater the crime you will commit or support. And the greater the lie, what lie would you not tell to create heaven?
To create heaven on earth, exactly. And this is what makes room.
This explains the Democratic Party today.
And also the sort of virtue signaling and the hypocrisy of Hollywood. I made a joke once. A few weeks ago, I said something like, if somebody describes themselves as a male feminist, you can start the clock on the rape charge. Because this is, they're aiming for this incredible utopia, so they'll excuse whatever bad behavior they have.
That's how Harvey Weinstein got as far as he got.
Right. And
because he's giving money to the cause of redeeming the
And this
world.
is the puritanical instinct. It is whatever I personally may do to oppress or immiserate someone else, I'm fighting for a higher cause. Yeah, and you remove something as I would say benevolent as Christianity and replace it with something as unpleasant as communism or social justice or whatever.
I was part of a group that put out one of the first, there was really the first magazine of the New Left. It's called Root and Branch.
Right.
And in it, I believe, is an article by Robert Scheer, who has remained a brain-dead leftist ever since. But this was wise what he said. He said, inside every revolutionary lurks a Puritan.
Right, because and I think you had something like that, or maybe you still do have a front page, right?
On front page,
you've spiced it up a little.
Inside every progressive is a totalitarian screaming to get out.
You've ramped it up a little bit because our changing times call for a higher level of rhetoric.
I love these people, we're on the right side of history, like history is becoming more and more enlightened. Yeah. Things are a lot worse than they were 50 years ago in this country.
Let me ask you how it is that so many young people can become susceptible to this stuff. I mean, the young...
It's easy. Young people are stupid. They have no life experience. You get seduced by these wonderful ideas. Oh, we can do it better than our parents did.
But there's something different, isn't there, about the millennial generation? Because, many generations prior to that have gone through this cycle of being liberal when they're younger and getting conservative as they get older, when they have kids, all the rest of it. Millennials are not doing that. Millennials are staying crazy. Like my age, people who are 35 years old, they're still crazy.
Our educational system has been destroyed by the left. So they're completely miseducated. They don't know anything. They don't know about communism. They don't
And that perhaps explains why, despite the fact that their life is better than it has ever been before, they seem to think it's worse.
Yeah, well, if you give people something, they don't appreciate it.
Right.
That's why legal immigration is good, because immigrants appreciate them.
Well, you hear all these great stories, don't you? People coming from communist dictatorships and writing for Commentary magazine about, what is America? What are you guys talking about? This is crazy.